this first video, we will make an overview of Mazao to show you all its facets and to explain its philosophy. Mazao is an object-oriented database. That is, each entity that it manages is an object. In the tab bar we can see that Mazao manages products, contacts, tasks and events. Then you might say, what? Yet another application to handle these things? But there are already tons of them. As Mazao? No. Because in fact, this is where lies the originality and the power of Mazao. Mazao is fully editable and customizable. And this is why, as we will see in this video, Mazao can be useful for a wide variety of users. For example, the first product tab manages, as its name indicates, products, but we must here take the term in its broadest sense possible. For example, for a real estate broker the product will be a house, a building or a business. And this user will be able, using the development tools of Mazao, to change the name of the product in assets. For a traveler, the product will be a journey, a getaway. Or, for a lover of good food, the product will be a dish, a recipe. For the rest of this video, I will continue with this idea where a product is a dish. And I will therefore use Mazao to save, for example, what we ate when we were invited at this or that friend, and what I have prepared on any particular occasion. So, let's go and create our first product. Well, now that the screen starts to fill, it's the right time to review the different areas of the screen. As I do this demonstration on iPad, we see both the list of products on the left, where we have now our first product that is called New Product, and we see the detail of this product on the right. In this right part is displayed all the attributes of the product. And now, as we just created this new product, all those attributes are ready to be edited. On an iPhone or an iPod, we see only one view at a time, either the list or a particular product. But for the rest, the application works exactly the same way, regardless the device used. At the top, we have the toolbar. We have the navigation buttons, which allows returning to the previous screen or the following. And we have a Help button, represented by a question mark. When I click on the Help button for the first time, a first text appears which indicates that I have to click on this interrogation mark again to exit the Help environment. It also says that I have to click a circle button to get help about this button. By clicking on a clear zone, an explanatory message will appear, and it will indicate what happens if I click on that button. For example, if I click here, I see a text that says, this button adds a link to an existing task. Okay, so to exit the help, I click the interrogation mark again. Let's continue our tour of the screen. So at the top, we have the toolbar, and at the bottom, we have the tab bar. The contents in the center of the screen depends on the selected tab. We have 4 types of Mazao managed objects: products, contacts, tasks, and events. We also have a calendar tab and a setting tabs that we will see shortly. Through this video, we are going to review each of these tabs. Let's go back to our product. For an iPad, the center of the screen is divided in 2 parts, the list of the products on the left and the selected product on the right. To introduce a somewhat more technical vocabulary, I would say that the left side is displaying the content of the class of products, and on the right, it displays a particular instance. It means a product in particular. Each of those 2 views have their own title bar, with a few buttons that relate only on the view in question. On the left, we have the buttons regarding the list of products. Can make a research, add a product, or edit the list to delete a product. On the right, the buttons refer to the product in particular. The first button is the classic button on an iPad to extend the view over the entire width of the screen. Then we have the Cancel button. This button appears only in the context of the creation of a new product. Clicking on this button will cancel the creation of the product. This means the product will be deleted. If I click Cancel, the product disappears. Okay, let's recreate this product. And finally, the last button is the Done button. This button is now disabled because we didn't input any data yet. For this demo, we said that the product is a dish. And the dish that I will introduce is the famous magret of duck that we ate at our friend Bob. When creating a new object, this object is always displayed in edit mode. And this means that these attributes are ready to be edited. For each object type, for each class object, Mazao by default provides a set of attributes. In the case of a product, we have the attributes photo, product designation, location, description, price, private information, and other. When the product is a trip or a building, the attribute location makes sense, but in the case of a magret of duck or a tiramisu, there is no much sense. That's why Mazao offers the possibility to modify those attributes, and this is the subject of another video. But let's first use what we have. So, I will write in the product designation field the name of my dish, magret of duck. As long as I'm busy to enter text in the field, the data is not yet saved in the database. In the list of products, we always see new product. It is at the moment where I click elsewhere, anywhere else in another field, in a button, or even on the title bar, that the information entered in the product designation field is stored in the database. I will show you what is happening. I now click on the product title, and our new product is now called magret of duck. Note also that in the title bar, the Done button is no more gray. So let's click. Now the product is no longer in edit mode. It's in read mode. In this mode, all attributes that contains no data are no longer displayed. So we have the designation magret of duck and two buttons, which allow creating a new task or a new event, and in the same time store in the product a link to the task or the event created. And we will come back to that. In the title bar, we have now the Edit button. If I click on this button, it places the product in edition mode again. We can see that the Edit button becomes Done to exit the edition mode. But there is no more Cancel button, as the magret of duck is no longer a new product. On the other hand, we now have a recycle bin, which allows us to remove the product. Well, it's time to add a picture to our magret of duck. For that, I click on the button Add. A small menu appears. This menu gives us the opportunity to choose a photo from different sources. We have the application photo, the application camera that allow us to directly take a picture, or even the iCloud. Okay, I know that I have a picture of this dish in the photo album. And now, in the list of the products, the icon of the product is replaced by the picture I just added. When you add a picture in a product, Mazao will not copy the whole photo in the database, because a photo can take megabytes. Mazao makes a reduction of the picture to keep only a small image that has a maximum of 500 pixels per side, and it is this small image which is stored in the database. In addition, Mazao also stores a link to the original photo. When Mazao should display a photo, if the small image is large enough, it simply used a small image. Otherwise, it will find the original image. Let's add a second photo. This time I choose a close-up. The new picture stands in front of the previous, and it also becomes the photo displayed in the list of products. In fact, it's always the first photo that is used as the image of the product. It is possible to change the order of the images by clicking on an image and keeping your finger on the image at least 1 second. Then you can move it to put it somewhere else. In doing so, it also changed the image of the product in the list. In edit mode, to click on the image selects it. Then the recycle bin in the attribute menu allows to remove the selected image. Let's quit the edition mode. In read mode, if I click on a photo, it appears full screen. It is also possible to zoom by spreading 2 fingers, and a new click on the photo made us out of the full screen. Let's now talk about the contacts. Mazao manages the contacts locally. That is, the contacts are stored only in the Mazao database. But with Mazao, one can also choose to synchronize some contacts with the Apple's application contacts. So for the creation of a contact, there are 2 options. First possibility, we create a contact locally. And we do this in the same way as the creation of a product. We simply click on the Add button and we have a new contact. In the right part of the screen, we see all the attributes of a new contact. And as for the product, the operation can be cancelled with a Cancel button. The second option to add a contact in Mazao is to import it from the Apple's application Contacts. For that, you need to click on the button Import. This opens a confirmation menu Import from Contacts. It opens the list of all our contacts, and we just need to click on the contact we want to import into Mazao. For example, let's choose Alice Renoir. Mazao creates a new contact in its database and copies the name, first name, birth date, and the photo of Alice Renoir to the new contact. In the title bar of this contact, we discover here a new button. It is the synchronization button. This means that if I change this contact in Mazao or in the Apple's application, when I press this button, the change will be transmitted to the other application. For example, I will indicate that Alice is an actress. I enter in edit mode and I write in the job title actress. I click Done and we are done. So now I synchronize. Synchronize with contact. Operation successful. Good, but obviously nothing has changed in Mazao. But let's see in the contact application. I get out of Mazao, pressing the iPad home button, and I select the contact application. I open the card Alice, and I see that she is an actress. Let's do the test in the opposite direction, and we add that she is also a singer. Edit. Let's return to Mazao. Okay, here she is actress only. Let's sync again. And now she is actress singer. Then, and this is the big question, what happens if I change the contact at the same time in both Mazao and in the Apple's contact? So, if the change concerns different attributes, there is no problem. Mazao changes will be forwarded to the application of Apple's and vice versa. On the other hand, what happens if the same attribute is modified on both sides at the same time? Well, it's simple. It is the modification made in Mazao that will be saved on both sides. We could make a more sophisticated treatment for the resolution of such conflicts, but in this case it is not really necessary because if a phone number or an address changes and you make the change on both sides, ultimately the result should be the same. We saw how to import a contact. Now we will add a contact locally in Mazao. Let's create a new contact for Bob. I input his given name, Bob, his family name, du chef, his job title, coach, and I know I have his picture, and we will also add the dish he prepared, the magret of duck. In the product attribute, we have a button with a product icon. This button allows us to choose a product from existing products. We currently have only one single product, magret of duck. Let's add it. So now this is done, let's quit the edition mode. And here is our second contact, Bob du chef. This contact contains a link to the product magret of duck. If I click on it, it opens the product object. And we can notice that a link to Bob du chef has also been automatically added in the product magret of duck. We can now very easily navigate between the two objects. And doing so, we are moving from one tab to another. With Mazao, when I enter in edit mode, for example for Bob du chef, it is not the whole application that enters in edit mode. It is only Bob du chef. Indeed, I can continue to navigate through the application and go to Alice Renoir, which is not in edit mode. Let's click on the product tab, and our magret of duck is also not in edition mode. Back to Bob du chef. Bob du chef is still in edition mode. Even if I leave the application and I come back, nothing has changed. The edit mode in Mazao is simply another way to show the object and allows to offer other possible actions. This is not because an object is in edit mode that everything can be changed, and vice versa. This is not because an object is in read mode that we cannot change anything. For example, here we can still create a new task and a new event. So, we have now two contacts, Bob du chef and Alice Renoir. Bob du chef is stored only locally in Mazao, and we can see this because the title bar contains the button Export. This button allows exporting information from Mazao to the Apple's application contacts. In comparison, Alice Renoir has the synchronization button because there is a copy of this contact in the Apple's application. Let's see now what happens if I export Bob du chef. Export to Contacts, successful operation. And let's go now to the Apple's contact application. And actually, I have here now a Bob du chef. And obviously there is no link to the product magret of duck because it is not a part of this application. Okay, this works. Let's delete this contact and return to Mazao. Mazao doesn't know that Bob du chef has been deleted in the other app. We have here the synchronization button. So what happens if now I try to synchronize Bob du chef? Let's try. Synchronize with contact. Well, we get the message contact not found. Yes, this was to be expected, but now I have the option to cancel the operation or to directly do a new export. I will cancel this operation, and obviously the synchronization failed. But it is interesting to note that our sync button becomes an export again. This means the contact Bob du chef is again only local in Mazao. Now let's see what happens when I delete a synchronized contact. Let's go back to Alice Renoir because she is synchronized. To delete a contact, I can do it from the contact list or from the contact object itself. From the contact list, I click Edit, Delete. From the object itself, I click Edit, Trash Can, the confirmation, and then I see that when I try to delete a contact that is synchronized with Apple's application, I get a message that asks me if I want to delete this contact only locally, this means Mazao, or in both sides, this means Mazao and in the Apple's app. Okay, well, for the moment I don't want to delete this contact, so I choose Cancel. Okay, but before going further, I will import a few contacts. Louise Blanchard and Vanessa Malcolm. Okay, it's a good time now to talk about the events object, and I will return to the task just after. So I want to input in Mazao that Bob invited us yesterday evening to savor his magret of duck. While product and contacts can be created only from the corresponding tabs, Mazao gives the possibility to create a task or an event directly from a product or a contact. When I create an event from this button, Mazao creates the event and directly links this event to this object. So, I click this button and this opens the standard window to create an event in the Apple's calendar. So let's input dinner at Bob last night between 7:30 and 11 p.m. Notice that the event has been created in a specific calendar called Mazao. I should make a note here because some users will not have this line. It concerns, for example, the persons who possess an email address at Gmail and left Gmail to manage their iOS calendar. In this case, Mazao then have to use the default calendar. In this situation, Mazao will write in the events note a line like Mazao 1.02. So you will have either a line with the calendar or a note Mazao followed by a version number. Unlike the contacts that can be created locally, the events are always associated with an event in the iOS calendar. If for one reason or another Mazao is unable to create an event in the Mazao calendar or in the default calendar, there will be an error message, and no local object will be created. In this first version, Mazao does not deal with the fields location, travel time, alert, URL. You can of course use these fields, but for the moment, Mazao ignores them. On the other hand, the field repeat is not accepted by Mazao, because currently Mazao creates an object for each event to which you can add a set of links to other objects. So in Mazao, the concept of an event is one single moment in time. So if you create a recurring event, this event will effectively be created in the iOS calendar, but Mazao will not create an object around this event. This repeat event will simply be ignored by Mazao. Well, let's click on the Add button to add this event on the iOS calendar, and Mazao will also create an event object. And now we have here an event associated with Bob. Let's click on this new event to add additional information. By clicking on the event, we enter in the Events tab. As usual, we have on the left side the list of all the events in Mazao, and we currently have one where we can see the date and the title. And on the right side, we have the event instance with the backlink to Bob already present. Okay, let's enter in edition mode and add the product magret of duck. Note that as soon as I add the link to the product, the picture also appears in the list of events. I can of course add event-specific pictures in the attribute photo, but if this photo attribute is empty, Mazao will use the photo of the first product. Let's complete this event because Alice was also present. And again, all links are bidirectional, because if I look the duck, I can see that the event is there, as well as Alice. She also have the link to the event. Let's go now to the calendar. I see the picture of Maghreb duck at the dinner's date, and I also see the picture of Vanessa at her birthday. We are looking now at the month view. By clicking the day selector, I turn to the day view, and I see the list of events of that day. For this day of April 13, we have one event, Dinner at Bob. The orange dot indicates that this is an event. If I click on it, it allows me to edit the iOS calendar information. If I click on the picture or the title of the event, I go to the Mazao event object. Let's use the navigation button to return to the day view. In the title bar, there is the button Add. This allows to create an event or a task for that particular day. Let's create a new event, but I will put it in a different calendar than Mazao. And now we have a new event that is not in the Mazao database. If I look in the Events tab, I have no new instance created. So the Mazao calendar gives the possibility to view and manage all iOS events, even those that are not part of Mazao. The Calendars button offers the possibility to choose the iOS calendars you want to display. The color of each dot corresponds to the color of the corresponding calendar. These colors can be changed in the Apple's Calendar application. From this view, it is also possible to scroll through the days by sliding your finger from right to left to see the next day, or from left to right to see the previous day. Let's use the selector to return to the month view. We can see now that in the cell of April 13, we have 2 events. Mazao can display up to 4 images per cell. Now I want to add in our database that we had tiramisu for dessert. So I create a new product that I call tiramisu. I know that I have a picture of it. And I can directly input that this tiramisu was part of the event Dinner at Bob. I also know that this tiramisu was prepared by Louise Blanchard. We can now return to our event Dinner at Bob, and we see our 2 products. Okay, let's put the tiramisu after the magret. Well, now that we added our event, we realize that if we could change some details, it would be so much better. For example, rename the class Product in Dishes. The class Contacts could remain Contacts, but in the context of this event, the title here, Contacts, should be called Guests. Finally, this view of the event does not tell me who prepares what dish. I cannot see that the magret is Bob's dish and the tiramisu is Louis' dish. In fact, the list of things we could change is very personal and will vary from one user to another, depending on how he will use the application. Mazao offers a backbone that allows to manage products, contacts, but in addition, it offers the possibility to modify the application. The user can adapt the application exactly according to his needs. In other videos I enter in detail in what is called the development tools, but I can resist to directly show you those possibilities. As the development tools are not the subject of this video, I will go pretty quickly, but do not panic, I explain everything in detail in other videos. Done. So now the view of the event shows the list of dishes with the person who prepared each dish and the list of guests. And of course, I can always arrange my dishes. The cook follows his dish. Well, now that I have given you a small taste of the possibilities of customization, to continue this video, I will return to the basic version, without the development tools. So far, we have talked about products, contacts and events. Let's now talk about tasks. And I will start with the creation of a new task. Try recipe throat with almonds. So, a task is simply something to do. A task has a status, it can have a deadline, and of course be in relation with other objects. By default, the status is not yet done. And for this first task, I will give as the deadline, for example, the end of the month. When a task has a deadline, this deadline is also reflected in the calendar. I see here at the end of the month that I now have the image of a checkbox that indicates that I have an undone task. If I click on the last day of the month, it opens the day view and I find my task. By clicking it, I open the task object. Let's leave the edition mode. Mazao always attempts to facilitate the most frequent operation, and this is why the status of the task can be changed even the object is not in edition mode. To change the status, we can click on the field Not Yet Done, and we have the choice between Done and Cancelled. By the way, the cancel status is only useful if you want to keep a history of tasks, because it is of course always possible to simply delete the task by clicking on Edit and then the trash. But to change the status of the task, it is also possible to simply click on the little checkbox. it goes from the state not yet done to the state done, then to cancelled. And then we are back to not yet done. And the status of the task can also be modified directly from the list of tasks, and even from the calendar in the day view. I will now add more tasks here to see how those tasks are sorted in the list. But first I will undone these tasks, and then I create a second task, start the restaurant project. Then I will add prepare the anniversary of Vanessa. And this must be done before April 19. And finally, I add call Alice. When you add a task like call Alice, as long as it is called new task in the list, it is always at the top of the list. As soon as I click outside the description, the name of this object is saved in the database and the new task takes its place in the list. So at the top of the list come the tasks that have a deadline. The most urgent deadline is at the top, and the most urgent is actually the oldest. 19th of April is older than 30th of April. Then come the other task, sorted alphabetically. This sort order that I have just described is true for all the tasks not yet done. As soon as a task is done or cancelled, it is pushed at the end of the list. Thus, we always have the to-do list at the top of the task list. Let's see now the order of the tasks when they are done. When the done tasks have a deadline, they are also sorted, but this time at the top we find the most recent task, and the others are still sorted alphabetically. How to sort the tasks can of course be changed using the development tools. Let's quit the edition mode of this task. And now it's time to discover the last tab, the settings. Under the term of settings are grouped a set of options, settings and features. I will iterate through all those elements here in order. The first setting is the store. The free version of Mazao, as it has been used in this video, allows you to already create a small database, but it remains, however, limited. Here we can see the different features that can be purchased. In this demonstration, the prices are not displayed because they may vary depending on the country and the exchange rate. The free version is limited as follows. Firstly, the free version limits the number of objects to 100. In fact, to be more precise, it is the number of instances that is limited to 100. Therefore, this limit concerns the total of products plus the total of contacts plus the total of tasks plus the total of events. As long as you do not have purchased the removal of this limit, the store also shows here the total number of instances. We can see here that during this video we created 11 instances. Indeed, we have 2 products, plus 4 contacts, it is 6, plus 4 tasks, 10, plus 1 event, this means 11 objects. Secondly, the free version does not allow making backups. The database is of course saved locally on the device. I will come back to this point when I will talk about backups. Thirdly, the free version does not have the development tools. It is with this purchase that you can start to customize the application following your needs. It's really these tools that give Mazao all its originality and power. I will show you a few things in this video, but essentially I speak of these tools in other videos. And finally, the free version displays a banner in the bottom of the screen like this. As you can see, the work area is therefore slightly reduced. As soon as I make a purchase in Mazao, regardless of the purchase that I did, the ads disappear. For example, if I buy the removal of the limit of 100 objects. I confirm, and now the banner is removed. By making this purchase, I obviously also remove the limit of 100 objects, but this can only be seen when I will create my 101 object. In the title bar, the Restore button is useful to retrieve purchases already made on another device. Or if for one reason or another you have removed Mazao from your device and then you reinstall it. Let's move to the next setting, private data. What's this? In fact, any instance can have attributes noted private. And when an attribute is noted private, it is visible only when this switch is set to visible, like now. And this is the default position of that switch. In Mazao, the products have such attribute called private information. That attribute is noted private. So let's input some confidential information. I can leave the edit mode, and I see here my confidential information. If I am the only one to look at this data, it doesn't matter. This is my confidential information, so no problem. But if for work or any other context, I want to show this screen to someone else, this confidential information displayed here in the middle of the screen can be a problem. And this is why in the setting there is a switch that allows me to hide all those private attributes. Let's see what happens if I hide the private data. We return now to our product, and we can see that the confidential information no longer appears. Even in edition mode, the private attribute does not appear. Let's go back to our setting and set the confidential data visible. When I do this, I see that I have a choice. I can put the data visible temporarily or permanently. So to explain that, let's first choose to see the data temporarily. I go back to the product, and OK, I see my confidential information. This is confidential. As long as I continue to use Mazao, the private information is visible. But from the moment I leave Mazao, the private information will be automatically hidden. So now the confidential information here is visible. Then I leave Mazao pressing the Home button. I do not see, but leaving Mazao, the switch returns automatically to the hide position. Let's check this by returning to Mazao. And indeed, I see that the product no longer displays the confidential information. And in the setting the switch is on hidden. So let's go to the private data always visible. Now, when I set the switch to always visible, well, the private attributes will always be visible, even if I leave the application. Let's talk now about the next item, the backups. This screen allows you to create and restore backups. Mazao offers the possibility to store a backup locally on your device or in the cloud, and more precisely in the iCloud drive. When you store a backup locally and you connect your device to a computer via iTunes, the backup is available in the iTunes document part of the application Mazao. It is possible that on your device you don't see the section iCloud drive. If this is the case, it is simply that iCloud is not enabled on your device. In this situation, if you enable iCloud, remember to restart the application so Mazao will see that iCloud is now present. I just remind you that to restart an application, you must leave Mazao by pressing the Device Home button, and then press again the Device Home button twice to see the list of active applications and eject Mazao. Then you can restart the application. The interest of backups is twofold. Of course, they allow to save your work and to retrieve it if you make a false maneuver. but they also allow to transfer your database on another device. In fact, if you do a backup in iCloud Drive from a first device, and then you restore the backup on another device that shares the same iCloud Drive, you so install this database on the second device. But if you copy the database on the second device, I must insist that there is no automatic synchronization between the two devices. Mazao works locally, and there is no sync with the cloud. Moreover, you can use Mazao without internet connection. Therefore, if you place a copy of your database on another device, you must choose the device that becomes the database master. The master of the database is the one that makes changes in the database, and the other device can only be used to make the consultation of the data. If you change the database at both sides, Mazao has no synchronization mechanism to try to merge the changes. If you properly manage this principle of the database master, nothing prevents you to transfer the database on another device, that becomes the master. Then you are working with this new master database on the second device for some time, and later again, from the second device, you do a new backup of the database that you retrieve on the first device. That becomes the new master again. So you can very well install the application on 2, 3, 4 devices, but there is always one and one only that must be the master. Moreover, it is very likely that a future version of Mazao will include a mechanism that will facilitate this management of master database. Well, to create a backup, simply click on the button Create Backup Locally or Create Backup in the Cloud. I will now create a backup locally, and let's create our first backup that I call Demo. Good, I have my backup. Now let's do a recovery test. To verify that I'm recovering well my data, I will start to delete the product Magret of Duck. So I go to Product, Magret of Duck, Edit, Delete. Delete the product Magret of Duck. Okay, no more duck. Notice that when we delete an object, Mazao also removes all links linking this object to other objects. So if I go to see Bob, he doesn't have the Magret the duck anymore. And the event, we just left with the tiramisu. Okay, now let's see if our backup works. I return to the settings and I click on Demo. When I do this, I have two options, Restore and Delete. Obviously, I will not remove my backup, otherwise I can say goodbye to the duck. So I click Restore. Restore the demo. This operation will replace all data. OK. And that's it. So let's verify our product. Wonderful. I have my dish again. And if I see Bob, he has his dish. And at the dinner, I see the duck. OK. A backup is identified by its name and by its date and time of creation. I therefore can have several backups with the same name. For example, I can create a second backup that I also call Demo. And let's directly create a third backup that I call Zebra. The backup Zebra is at the top, because by default the backups are sorted by date with the most recent date at the top. Zebra is the most recent backup, it is at the top. Using the menu on the right, we can change the sort order by name. And now Zebra, starting with a Z, is at the end of the list. The same menu allows you to go back to the sort by dates. And now Zebra is again at the top. We arrive now to the language setting. Mazao is multilingual. By default, the language is the language of the device. But you can change this via the language setting. Currently, Mazao offers 5 languages: English, French, Chinese, Spanish, and Portuguese. Let's see what happens if I click to French. I get a message that indicates that the change of language is almost complete. But to get the change done really at 100%, I need to restart the application. Actually, at first glance, everything seems to be translated. Let's see our product. Okay, the term product is translated, and even all those titles, as well as the label of the attributes. Obviously, McGraw of Duck and this is confidential remains in English, but then why we got the message saying that the application was not completely in English? Well, I will show you an example. Let's create a new event by using the button Create a new event, Créer un nouvel événement. And we directly see here that everything is still in English. This is because this interface comes directly from the Apple's calendar and has not yet been reset. So we cancel this event and I restart the application. Okay, the application restarted. Let's try again to create a new event. And now we can see that all the fields are in French. So it's worked. Now, before returning in English, there is another point on which I would like to draw attention. Look at the date and time of Bob's dinner. We have here the month, is translated in French, it becomes AVR, like for Avril, but the format itself is still the English format, like April 13, 7:30 p.m. And the hour here is not correct, it should be the 24-hour format. It should be 19:30. And this is to correct this that I will now move to the next setting, the parameters. First, I change the language back to English. And now let's see the parameters. Okay, the first parameter is the size of the thumbnail Mazao stores in its database. I recall that when you add an image to an object, Mazao does not copy the whole image in its database, but extracts a thumbnail image, and it is this small image and also a reference to the original image that are stored in the database. Through this first parameter, it is possible to change the maximum size in pixels of the small image Mazao will store in the database. When you change this setting, the new value will be used for future image you introduce in Mazao. The existing thumbnails in the database will remain unchanged. I should also notice that those settings are also saved during the backup. So if I change the value here to 1000 and then I restore an old backup, the size of this thumbnail is back to 500. Okay, let's see our second parameter. This concerns the format of dates and times. This parameter allows us to choose if I want that the format of date and times follow the device setting or it follows the current language used in Mazao. By default, Mazao respects the format specified in the device settings. Thus, Mazao displays dates and times as the other applications on your device. But if you want to work with Mazao in another language, it might be interesting that the format follows the language. As my device settings are set to English and the language used in Mazao is also English, having the format of dates and times based on the device or based on the current language changes absolutely nothing. But now, if I change the language back to French, the format of dates and times will now respect the French language. Let's see our product. And we see now that the date and time of Dinner at Bob respect the French format. 13 avril 19h30, with the hour in a 20-hour format. Let's click the event, and we see the change here also. And even the backup dates are changed. We see here all those dates respect the French format. Let's return to English. And now I have the English format. Next setting, the development tools. The development tools switch shows or hides the development tools. So let's show them. We see here the 3 new tabs and in the toolbar 2 new buttons. If the new tabs are grayed out, it is that the tool has not yet been released. By clicking one of these tabs, we receive an invitation to go to the store. So let's purchase development tools. Once that is done, we have now 3 brown tabs here in the tab bar. But the 2 buttons are still dimmed. This is normal, and I described those 2 buttons and those 3 tabs in detail in another video. So I will make here only a brief description of those 3 tabs. The first tool manages the classes. We find here the 4 classes of Mazao: Product, Contact, Task, and Event. It is here in this tab that we define the classes and their attributes. For example, here is the definition of the class Product. I will not enter in all the details of a class definition, but to define a class, we sometimes need to express a bit of logic, as for example, what will be the title for an instance product. Here we can see that the title of an instance product will be either the designation or the location, and this expression is written in Lisp. Mazao therefore uses the Lisp programming language to express its logic. Let's check what we just discovered about the title of a product, that it is the designation or the location. Let's create a new product to make some tests. Now the title is New Product, but I will introduce some data in the designation, location, and description. Okay, we see that the title is designation. What if I delete this? Okay, the title is now location. And what happens if I now delete the location? Well, we have new product again. So, even the product has a description, we just discovered that the product has no title because he has no designation and no location. Okay, we can delete this product and return to the classes. So, we have seen that this logic to build the title of a product instance is expressed in Lisp by this expression, where the title is either a designation or a location. Of course, with the development tools, and this is the beauty of Mazao, you can change that logic. Let's now move to the second tab of the tools, the glossaries. This tab manages glossaries and terms. A glossary is simply an object that contains a list of terms, and a term is an object that contains a piece of multilingual text. For example, the main glossary contains the term successful operation. When I open it, I see all the translation of the term successful operation in all languages that Mazao manages. The terms objects are one of the pillars of the Mazao multilingual management. We can now go to the third brown tab, the Lisp interpreter. As seen in the classes, Mazao expresses its logic using the Lisp programming language. The version of Lisp used by Mazao is a large subset of Common Lisp, to which we added a bit of syntactic sugar. Lisp is an interpreted language. This means that we just type a Lisp command and the result is obtained directly. For example, I introduced the expression +123. Then I hit the key Enter or Return. When I hit the key, the interpreter evaluates the Lisp expression and prints the result, here 6. You can also click on the blue triangle to run the command. This Lisp tab is useful if you want to learn Lisp, but also when you want to test some expression or directly access the database. For example, I can write list instances product. By evaluating this expression, I get a list of 2 products, the Maghreb duck and the tiramisu. I can now complete the expression, for example, to display the second product, the tiramisu. So I can write show second list instances product. And at the moment I press enter, hop, we arrive at the tab with the displayed tiramisu. Well, I will stop here this very short introduction to the development tools. In the meantime, we can see that the two buttons here are activated, but I won't talk about this here. Let's go back to the settings, and we can now mask the development tools. Now we arrive to the logbook. In fact, this is not really a setting. It simply displays messages in case of problems. So that the logbook is empty is rather a good news. Most of the messages that appear here concern Lisp programming errors. For that reason, we could say that the logbook is somehow part of the development tools. Let's continue the next setting, scrolling in full screen. This setting is especially useful for small devices like the iPhone or the iPod, and is less useful for an iPad, because the purpose of this setting is to give more space on the screen when you scroll a view vertically. And this is why this switch is activated by default only on iPhone and iPod. To explain what this switch does, the easiest way is to show it in action. I activate this setting and let's go to see a contact. OK, Bob du Chef. In read mode, we can see all the information. Let's switch to the edition mode. Now I cannot see all the data on the screen. To see the bottom of the instance Bob, I have to scroll the view. On an iPad, this is not too much trouble because there is enough visible space in the center of the screen. But on an iPhone, the space used by the toolbar plus the title bar plus the tab bar begins to take a significant part of the screen. That's why if I scroll the screen more than 3 times, Mazao goes automatically into full screen mode. So let's do the scroll a few times. And you see, Mazao is now in full screen. A button appears in the lower right corner to exit the full screen. When we are in this full screen mode, we can continue to navigate through the objects. For example, I can click Louise Blanchard, the tiramisu, the dinner at Bob, who are always in full screen. When you need to access a tab or a button currently inaccessible, you just exit the full screen by clicking the small button in the corner here. And now we get the usual interface back until we scroll again a view several times. OK, we can return to our settings and close the option full screen. So here we come slowly at the end of the settings. Send feedback. When you click on Send feedback, this opens the email editor and you can send us your comments. Your comments are always appreciated and are very important for us because it really allows us to improve Mazao. And finally, About. This screen just gives us more information about this application. For example, we have the Mazao version number and the DataLisp version number. What is DataLisp? Well, Mazao is the application that has the 4 classes: product, contact, task, and event, while DataLisp is somehow the engine that integrates the database, the Lisp language, and the user interface. So we can say that Mazao is built above DataLisp. And here is also a URL to the DataLisp site, which contains a Mazao section. This site is still in writing because write documentation is rather long and tedious, but do not hesitate to go there because it already has a lot of information, in particular on Lisp language, and a few syntax extensions used by DataLisp. Well, this ends this first video of Mazao. A big thank you to have watched it, and if you like Mazao, talk to your friends, and I am waiting for your comments. So have a great day and see you very soon.